So now let's listen from another host of the experience and lessons, that is the World Bank. Mr. José-Luis Irigoyen, please.
Thank you, and good afternoon. It's really a pleasure to be here. It's a very important issue for us. It has clearly become a developing challenge, and as a developing institution that confronts this issue from the perspective of preparing countries to deal with making them more resilient, and in the post-reconstruction, we are seeing now that these lines are getting blurred. And just to give you a sense of how far have we gone in developing new approaches, 15% of our portfolio is now related to disasters. The World Bank is the largest external financier in the water sector, and $26 billion portfolio. We have increased dramatically in the last 3 years our lending, 7.5 billion in fiscal year 11, and the reason is because we are seeing the centrality of water. So I'm really very glad various speakers makes this reference even to sanitation, for example, and what is the connection with the problems of the poor that have very poor sanitation or don't have even access to sanitation, how disasters aggravate the conditions. Another example of how far we have gone, we have developed even a new financial instrument several years ago that now is being used, and most recently in the Philippines. It's what we call a deferred drawdown option for catastrophes that is triggered when a catastrophe hits a country. So it was recently triggered by the Typhoon Sendong in the Philippines, a $500 million loan. Three lessons that I would like to share. I will try not to repeat what others have said, which is becoming increasingly a problem. One is be prepared. Prevention pays off, but be prepared for the unexpected. I think that this is a lesson that comes from the large disasters, but also from those that have more frequency and are not as big ones. And what is the implication of this? If you think in terms of the mindset, in the past we were designing projects thinking that we were taking care of all the risks. This new mindset requires that you look at what are the validity of our assumptions, a more sort of iterative process where you question yourself about those assumptions and you look at what can happen if those assumptions are wrong. And what is the level that if you have an investment that has a catastrophic tail risk, maybe it's more important than optimizing a design, choosing a design that's more robust for that type of situation. So this has tremendous implications for the way we design our investment programs. Also, in this context, you realize that the traditional economic analysis that does not factor this into account may not give you the right answers. It was mentioned also that in this approach, the difficulty of balancing between the structural and the non-structural measures, and particularly when you work in prevention and later on in the post-reconstruction, learnings of what had happened have to inform future operations. But clearly there is a tendency to focus more on the concrete on the ground and forgetting about building all these systems, early warnings, weather information systems, for example, risk-based land use plans that will mitigate future risks have proven very, very important in order to diminish the impact of these disasters. And many times, these structural solutions can transfer the risk, particularly in urban centers, to upstream or downstream. For us, it's a challenge also to think when you do the planning has to be done for situations that you can forecast, but also for the uncertainties that are increasingly becoming now more difficult to deal with. And in this respect, for example, we are trying to incorporate in the design, for example, the design of an integrated flood management strategy for Ho Chi Minh City, what is the impact of future land use patterns, of climate change, and other factors that a priori will not be taken into account. So again, this notion of the intersectorality comes very, very clear. A second lesson, and very briefly, I'm really glad that the document that was circulated by Japan makes the connection with green growth. I think we need a much bolder action on building resilience. And when you think about resilience, it's adaptation in the context of climate change, and adaptation is about water. And still, I don't understand why is that we don't have an enabling environment, for example, to help countries, particularly developing countries that have that problem, to develop more resilience by, for example, having storage, water storage. And what I like of that report is that by having a more integrated, a more holistic view about water and seeing water and the intersection of all these problems, you can better deal with the issue of droughts as much as the issue of floods. And again, another lesson from recent past. Australia was preparing for droughts and had floods. So it's part of the new normal, as we were saying at the beginning. No? So an important area for us would be to push for more attention and for more investment and for looking at the resilience of the investments we finance. A third lesson would be, what are the institutional capacity? What is the legal framework that you may need in order to introduce more ambitious measures, those that will allow you to really reduce risk in the long term, that may require legislation, that may require institutions that can coordinate among themselves, that can help develop the safety nets that you will need to mitigate the impact on the poor.
Thank you very much. The point, number one point you said reminds me of the, the presentation by His Imperial Highness. He mentioned two monuments, which might contradict to each other, but which is not. Actually, you have to learn from the past, but don't simply pick up an example and put it in some other, to your actions. Actually, you have to analyze, you have to know, in what condition this applies, and what actions you can take. So, that is backed up by the comment of yours, and I'm really encouraged that, our lessons can be learned and made effectively by carefully analyzing by the institutions like yours.